Well, first of all, I have to thank a certain number of persons, starting from the panelists of today, because they accepted to participate in this discussion, which is an utopia and a concrete thing on the same time. Secondly, I would like to thank Susan, Ronald, and Screen Malta, because they were really helpful and friendly also in helping me to be together with you today. I'm so sorry not to be in person. A possible pneumonia forced me to stay at home, and it's a real disaster for me. Also, because I'm on the big screen, I think like imposing myself, and I'm just a moderator. The words, the concept, the ideas had to come from you. Thirdly, I would like to thank Teresa Cavina, because without her, not only this panel, but the festival this year couldn't be possible. And it's a fantastic achievement for Malta, I hope so, and for all the cinematic community, because Malta is a crucial country, a crucial moment in the actual situation in the Mediterranean and in possibly in our culture of nowadays and on the future. Well, what can I say? What are we talking about when we're talking about Mare Nostrum? We've said it, we've written it. The Roman expression Mare Nostrum is suddenly back in the news today. Apparently, it's not brandly new. The new tug of war between the green modern powers comes into focus on the very shores of the Mediterranean. It's history. It comes from the last century. But nowadays, there is not only the horror of weapons and bombs, the real war is also fought on financial markets and economic aid to different countries. And the answers of those who speak peace and serene coexistence among peoples, who are also very different in history and traditions, go primarily through those bridges of solidarity and mutual understanding that only culture can guarantee. Culture, difficult word to pronounce, especially nowadays, because the military strategy can be opposed to that need for relief that belongs to the hospitalier orders of medieval knights. It's fantastic to talk about that in Malta. And tomorrow, the feast of the Sovereign Order of Knights could be a sign, also an inspiration, also for this panel. But this is not enough to oppose the financial strategy with ever-increasing economic aid that even risks dragging national economies. It's necessary to bring a culture of diversity that makes each people curious and a participant in the roots of their neighbor. In short, when we say Mar Nostrum, we have to conceive a melting pot of diversity. The French would say a bouillon des cultures, n'est-ce pas, Frédéric? On which could start a new model of coexistence and economy. Is it possible? Is it a real and concrete possibility or just an utopia? I have to add some preliminary consideration, very personal, because I'm not sure that any one of you can share the same ideas. But the colonial dominance of European taste on the other shore of the Mediterranean, paradoxically enchained by television in the last part of the last century, is showing increasingly evident cracks in favor of both a globalized and standardized taste and a proud recovery of national and regional particularities. We are so different and we are so close. We have to invent a bridge or a series of bridges between among all of us. When we, the Europeans, the northern part of the Mediterranean, see the South Sea, but we can also consider the extremes, the Balkans or the Portugal, we have to face a sort of insincere attention, insincere curiosity for the different countries, for different cultures. Even when this collides with the popular perception of Europe, because sometimes we consider ourselves like a defensive fortress of values and specificities, often used as a shield for much more concrete economic and social interests. The tension to inclusion passes in the first place precisely through culture, available as a ground for meeting and dissemination. Hence, the importance of the circulation of works, of festivals, special programs that have become not only the outpost of quality, but also of the breaking of barriers and prejudice. Sometimes a good film, an exciting TV series, a song, a creative freedom does much more than many political speeches. Maybe this is one of the reasons why, together with Screen Malta, we decided not to hear today the words of politicians, not to hear the ideas of the traditional institutions of the European Parliament, of the European Commission, of the different country governments, and to ask an help from programs like Eurimage, Creative Europe, Europa Cinema. We can also mention programs like Euromed, Cinéma du Monde, that have done a lot in these decades to support an alternative vision of cinema, also in the Mediterranean shores. But do we have today the means, the perspective, the institutional to go a step further? I have to thank also the media desk in Malta and Daniela Said to be together today for the generous cooperation. But now we have to face the point of view of technicians, the point of view of creatives, because we need a vision which is not limited only to our narrow hour of expertise. Normally, in this kind of panels, the moderator is supposed to start the discussion asking something. Well, we didn't have the time to prepare the questions and the answers, but this is maybe a good thing to be more informal and more concrete in our discussion. So let's start from my side with Anton Kaleja. No need to introduce him, especially for a Maltese audience. I just remind that he's a producer and creative consultant. He spent a lot of time in Eurimage. He has a long experience in festival and national production funds. And in a season when the only way to make works other than mainstream blockbusters seem to be the constant search for co-production, does this help, and how does the system of even creative exchange between different cultures in the Mediterranean, starting from a small reality like Malta is or was maybe, this point of view could be a necessary kickoff? Are you able and ready to start this discussion, giving us your point of view?
First of all,
Good luck.
Thanks for inviting me for this discussion. I didn't understand fully the question because the sound is not very good. I'm gonna try to answer from what I understood because I heard that.
If you want, I can repeat.
Yeah, if
Okay.
you have the.
Also for you, maybe, because, yeah, the sound is not the best. Maltese producer and creative consultant, 12 years at Eurimage, and a long experience between festivals and national production funds. In a season when the only way to make works other than mainstream blockbusters seems to be the constant search for co-production, does this help, and how does a system of even creative exchange between different cultures in the Mediterranean, starting from a small reality like Malta, his point of view is certainly an obligatory kickoff. So the role of Malta
Thank you, Teresa.
which is a festival as well in its role of bridging, being a bridge between the different places that share the same sea, but they don't have the same culture. How do you see Malta in relation to the Mediterranean Sea and Malta in relation, of course, to Europe, which is there is still a lot of stuff to do in that direction.
Yeah. No, I guess there are many, at least in my opinion, there are many different realities in this. In the sense that, first of all, we're speaking mostly about the Mediterranean, so it's like the South. But the South is made up of different realities. You have, let's say, areas which are a little bit more developed than others. But apart from that, one of the main differences that, for example, this country has from others is that we are also an island. And an island also brings with it other different perspectives, which would be let's say, similar, for example, for Cyprus. Culturally, we are similar to the countries around us, I would say, but at the same time different because the countries went through different experiences. But of course, in the world of cinema, without collaborations and without co-productions, it's very hard to get projects done. So for sure, whereas maybe 20, 30 years ago, co-production was seen as not the exception, but as something which was not so much used. Today, I would say it's the normal way of doing cinema, unless you co-produce. Especially if you're coming from a small country like Malta. And this, I think, applies also to all the neighboring countries. It's very hard to do something. I don't know if I really understood the question, but...
May I add something, if you can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, yeah.
The second part of my question was exactly that. Is co-production a key level in order to improve a cooperation between the different countries and the different cultures? I mean, when you are co-producing, you can discover easier the point of view of the others. Or maybe it's not just a system to do films or to do series, it's a system to have this melting pot of cultures.
Yeah, for sure. Co-production is the natural way of collaborating between cultures. So apart from being necessary for various reasons, being financial, but also creative, it's definitely a way to exchange ideas, a way to exchange methods of doing things. And it's a way to bring the cultures also together. So yeah, I'm a big believer of co-production. Spent many years working on.
If I intrude in the conversation, but it is the name of Malta is almost always connected to American or a UK title, not to a European title, except yesterday, and it was fantastic for us to open the festival with a French co-production, The Count of Monte Cristo. Do you think that this tendency, I'm not saying to cancel, because I think that I'm paratactic, I'm in favor of end. So, of course, good to go on with a great collaboration with the English-speaking countries. But is there room here in Malta and interest to develop also co-productions with other countries, European, of course, in premise, but also with the non-European countries?
For sure. So I believe that Malta's natural place is Europe. So in my opinion, we should be co-producing mostly with Europe and with our neighboring countries, maybe starting with Italy, which is very close culturally to us. Let's say that at the moment, there's a big focus on servicing in this country. So we see more and more of these big budget projects which just come here just to shoot and then leave. Let's say I come from another side, another viewpoint. I believe that it's good to have a long-term strategy investing in your own industry with a very strong emphasis on co-productions, including minority co-productions, because this is the way how I think we can develop our cinema.
Right. And Giorgio, now, oh, sorry, please. Giorgio, go ahead.
Yeah, because we have to go on the other side of a problem, the point of view of the viewers. So thank you to Frédéric Cornet, who is an exhibitor, a member of Europa Cinema, and a member of the board of Cineuropa. So he's deeply involved in the European structures, but he's also especially a manager in Cinéma Galerie in Brussels, where he has a long experience of festival reviews, special programs devoted to different Mediterranean cultures. And he tried to expand his experience also on the other side of the sea. So my first question for him is about the sensibility of viewers in a potentially exemplary place like Brussels is. Brussels is the center of the United Europe, but Brussels is also the capital of a country shaken by moods and often opposite the taste of the others. So what is the reaction of the viewers in your cinemas, in your experience? Are they interested and able to overwhelm the cultural prejudice?
Hello, Giorgio.
Because in fact we have cultural prejudice. This is honestly very clear.
First of all, I want to thank you all for inviting us, from me. And it's really sad that I cannot meet you, actually, because the talk that we had on the phone was so interesting, and thank you for the introduction. So, yes, it's amazing to be here, and I think like this conversation is one of the most interesting and the closest to the work I do on a daily basis in my cinema. So as I'm the managing director of Cinema Galerie, and I'm part of Europa Cinema boards of director. In Cinema Galerie, we defend Mediterranean cinema, and we have a special focus that we do every year, a festival that focuses on different cities. And the thing is, we want to understand the changes of the cities around the Mediterranean Sea through the lens of cinema. And to do that, so the first city was Cairo. And to do that, we ask always to have a co-programmer from the city, basically us, but there. So we have a small cinema to room, and we ask to someone there with a small cinema, kidding, but defending art of cinema and European cinema there to help us program and understand what is the representation of the city and the changes of the city. You can imagine Cairo with the revolution. You can imagine in Tunisia, in Beirut, in many other cities. All cinema has been witnessing these changes, I would say. And so we asked them, and for us, it was really important to have this balanced relationship in the programming, meaning that those people actually help us to avoid a sort of Western gaze when we talk about the cities around the Mediterranean Sea, which is really important because we can have a form of Orientalism in the way we program.
Right.
And we can see that in festivals. So the main purpose is just like to avoid that. And by avoiding that, we also avoid really big names because they want to show us really what is the cinema that represents them. And so we started with Cairo, and then last year was about Athens, so every year we change cities. And I can say something about the audience, is that we create our audience. Those people who come every year to the festival, that discover the city with us, discover and all the talks that we have around the changes in the city, the reshaping of the city, especially for Istanbul with all the architecture changes. It's really important to understand that we build a community around those films that comes for the festival, but every year, every day for other films, because we are also distributors and we distribute film, Tunisian film, Lebanese film. We also distribute Greek film recently, The Summer with Carmen. So it's all those people who actually understand what we do and then comes to our cinema like weeks after weeks. But it's also, we are reshaping a little bit the cinemas also in the programming of the cinemas in Belgium, because through the distribution, they have access to those films and then they can propose them to their audience. So it's really important that the impact of what you decide to put on screen and what you decide to distribute has an impact for other cinemas as well. I hope I respond to your question.
Maybe I also in this case I have something to add. Because I think that every one of us is curious enough to say, oh, I have to go and visit Cairo, Athens, Tunis, Casablanca, or Rabat. And on the other side, who could say, I'm not curious to go to Rome, to Paris, to London, because I'm very politically incorrect, apart the moment of Brexit. I think that UK is part of Europe because of the culture, because of the tradition. When we face cinema, the starting point is different. Am I curious to see a Tunisian film? Am I curious to see a German film? Am I curious to go to Poland through his cinema? Normally, I think that there is a breaking point, a moment in which we have to decide to be curious through cinema, through images, through stories. And then we discover that we have plenty of things in common. But the first time, the first kickoff is so difficult, even nowadays, even in Europe, I think. And I presume that is a crucial point also for Mare Nostrum. Am I right or not?
I'm not sure that I fully understand your question, but if I can be politically incorrect as well, I think if we ask to some people on the other side of the Mediterranean Sea if they would like to come to Europe, they would ask you, like, will I get the visa to come? So it's also the possibility of visiting through, we have the possibility to go there, they don't have the possibility to visit our countries. But I'm not sure that I fully understand because the sound is not good.
Yeah.
But I would like to just say that I think it's important to also show European cinemas in those cities, meaning that we have lots of European representation in big cities like Rabat, in Tunis, in Beirut, but we miss the opportunity of actually supporting the distribution of European film or the exhibition, the diffusion of European film there, because back in the days, Europa Cinema was helping with Europa Cinema Mundus and was actually supporting the diffusion of European narratives and storytelling. And it's really sad that actually this doesn't exist anymore, because this is also an incentive. I don't know if you know Europa Cinema, but it's a network that actually support financially the cinemas to program European films. And they had that also in the other side of the Mediterranean Sea, so in the Maghreb and also in Egypt, in other countries that are not a part of media. And so if we can hope for something like this to happen again, our stories, European stories, can be also be seen there, and with people that would actually find both the interest of showing that, but also the financial interest in promoting these kind of stories. Because we can see that, I mean, US stories are quite well promoted everywhere. We should actually give them the possibility to promote them, our stories, in other cities, other countries.
But if I can add something, there is something that we are not saying, but it's very important, and it is that on one side we have public institutions, fantastic programmer in fantastic cinemas, we have culture. On the other side, we have the commercial choices, and unfortunately, all the film, this kind of film we are talking now, is totally out of the commercial choices. There is I mean, if I try to program somewhere a film, the first thing I'm asked is there a star? Is it in English? And so what I think all of us in our different capacity wants to do is to support the circulation of cinema, because the audience is not stupid. They know if a film is nice or not, if they can like it. But if they're only exposed to blockbusters, if they're only exposed to the same story, which is milked till when there is nothing left, they get lazy.
Absolutely.
So production, you have two elements, production and circulation. And those two elements should be supported as much as possible around the Mediterranean Sea. And how they can be supported? Because we cannot count on the commercial circulation of those films.
Absolutely. But I think that's where Europe is maybe the only institution who can help to show this diversity. First, they help to produce this diversity that we can see all the film produced in Europe, but also to give the possibility of this diversity to allow them also to build a new audience for this kind of film. I think Europe has to do something in this matter.
Teresa, when you say that production and circulation must be supported, of course I have to see Enrico Vannucci, but I have to ask him to wait for a moment, because now is the time for ladies, and now is the time for the creators. I think that it's much important to underline how the concepts, how the ideas, how art is the starting point of everything. And this is why I would like to ask to Elena Medina, thanking her so much to be together with us today, to bring us her experience on both sides, because for personal reasons, her biography, for her attention to the blockbuster system, the mainstream industry on one hand, and Creative Europe experience on the other hand, she has a fantastic experience, and so I think she could be really inspiring for our discussion. What do you think, Helena?
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I have good news for you. Elena understood your question, because now the sound is much better than before.
Yes.
I did.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for your words, and thanks, Teresa. Thank you, Giorgio, and everyone for inviting me here. Yes, it's true. I do work for the mainstream, popular, industry. And I also have the experience with Creative Europe that usually the projects are more or less commercial, so as to say. Some of them are commercial, but my feeling is most of the projects that I read and I evaluate that involve countries from the north shore of the Mediterranean and south shore of the Mediterranean usually focus on the differences more than on what we share and more than on the similarities. Most of these projects are either addressing themes and issues related to immigration, or also cultural clash, modernity versus tradition, and always modernity being the North Shore, tradition being the South Shore, and the writers who write them are either from the North Shore, or they are writers from the South Shore that live in the North Shore. So the focus is usually on this type of themes, which are real, they happen, and this is okay. But there is more about it. There are many things that we share and that are not necessarily related to this. And talking about a very commercial example would be, for example, Turkish telenovelas. Turkish telenovelas are absolutely commercial. They are absolutely Mediterranean, and they are what the word now is called glocal, in the sense that they are aesthetically, you could discuss that, but indeed they are very much rooted in the personality and in things that we share in the Mediterranean, the approach to the idea of family, the idea of loyalty, even the approach to love or romantic love, honor. There are also even telenovelas that are historical, that are set in historical settings, like in Turkey. But despite that, they travel not only to the rest of the countries in the Mediterranean, but they travel beyond that. They travel all over the world. And they are very much liked in Greece, Spain, France, Mediterranean countries, because they do not focus on the differences. They focus on the similarities that we all have. And I think that's, in a way, I don't know, I mean, I don't have the truth in this, but I think this has to do with being commercial or not being commercial. Something that focuses on the similarities, that uses what we share to make enticing plots, commercial plots, reaches more people or reaches the interests of more people than the things that are more the problems, the differences, So, yeah, I don't know if I have answered the question.
It's a tricky point.
Yeah, it is tricky. It is definitely tricky. It is. And of course, something can be commercial and still focus on this more, in these differences, on this. But the films that focus on these issues tend to be sided. It's always, usually, from the point of view of the North Shore. And it's like they are the others. And I think that's the way it is. Tricky, definitely. I mean, I'm not saying it cannot be commercial and focus on this, but that's the trend that I see.
What you are saying prompts me a reflection, which is, in Italy, one of the films that did better at the box office last winter was a film about a gentleman cleaning toilets in Tokyo.
Oh yes, I saw it. Yeah.
About
it can be commercial.
Windbenders,
Yes.
A Perfect Day.
Yes.
And that for sure, if it were to be pitched to any producer, it would say, okay, it's a 500,000 euro film, but then let's wait for the art house circuit. So you're right, it's difficult.
There is also a difference between cinema and television, they travel in a different manner. And I think in cinema, as you said, in a way, distribution is extremely important. The way it is presented to the public, it's key. The genre, they say it belongs to. This attracts a lot of people, and television, which is my field, is what I work for, travels in a different manner, and television is even thinking of money more than cinema, and the approach is usually lighter, if you want, but not necessarily light, because it focuses on deep things that are similar, that we share, and that unite us, not in the things that make us different.
Yeah.
You know, Billy Wilder was used to say, if I have to send messages, I call a postman to send messages. I'm a film director. I have to entertain my audience.
That's
and
true.
maybe to use the entertainment also to lead them to think, but nothing more, because cinema is also an industry. So I'm not against, and I think that culture has to face the idea that cinema and audiovisual and TV are entertainment, are industry.
Yes. And they are
It's
entertainment.
not the hell.
Yeah. It's like they are basically entertainment. Basically, they are entertainment. And then they can do more. But the main intention is to entertain people.
All right, but it's also a fantastic instrument to discover the others, to discover other countries,
Yes.
other cultures, other traditions, other behaviors. My crucial point when I started to think to this panel was we use the expression Mare Nostrum, is a Latin expression, a Roman expression. But at that time, the idea, the concept of Romans was, this is our sea, and all the people attending this sea has to be submitted to the Roman law, to the Roman Empire. And if they are not able to do that, we have to submit them. Nowadays, the situation is totally different. When we say Mare Nostrum, we need to conceive a cooperation of cultures, a cooperation of countries, a cooperation of people and nations and roots, which is much more different. In the past, I had just one experience to mention to you, which is not a Latin word, it's more or less an Italian word, was lingua franca. At the time of the Venetians, at the time of the commerce between the sea, the Venetians were able to speak a very strange language, a sort of Esperantus of their time, in order to be understood in every country, in every port. And there was a situation, a common language, able to be understood by everyone in the different lands of the Mediterranean. So my question nowadays is, can we do something like lingua franca with the language of cinema? And this is the reason why I start with Daniela, not because she's in charge of the media desk in Malta, but because she's a musician. She knows music, and she knows very well, for sure, the experience of what music made in the last 2, 3, 4 decades for a sort of lingua franca of a Mediterranean culture. In fact, nowadays, we have a fantastic achievement of a mixed music, which is not Maltese, Italian, Spanish, Tunisian, Egyptian. It's a common language made by art, made by music. According to you, is it possible to reproduce, to recreate the same idea with cinema, with images?
Definitely. As was mentioned before, the Mediterranean is this huge melting pot of historical richness, which makes every country distinct in its own way, but has common denominators as well. And the same with music, where you have different kinds of scales where one can recognize that music is from Romania, from Egypt, from Malta. There is an underlying universality, because ultimately, art in general is made by humans. And with all our differences, that is what remain, humans. So yes, I think it is very possible to have this common language, even in film, but it can only be reached through cooperation between different countries. You mentioned Mare Nostrum, and for the festival we have unity, which is a key word. The sea can be seen both as an obstacle, but also as a bridge. And that is where we sometimes stop ourselves, because we see that sea as an obstacle. But, like in the past, where it was used for trade, a bridge, we need to do that now as well with the audiovisual world. In the Mediterranean, I will speak mostly for the Euro-Mediterranean view. We have quite a mix. We have low-capacity countries mixed with high-capacity countries. And this geographic vicinity and this relatability from a cultural standpoint can be a focal point in the future of film. Because once the high audiovisual capacity countries recognize this and decide to cooperate further and in a more tangible way with low-capacity countries, that is how all these industries, with all their different strong points and weaknesses, can move forward. Without that, we're stuck. And Mare Nostrum is mare isolatorio, which is something we cannot afford. And then beyond that, going back to the Mediterranean as a whole, it opens up windows to different markets as well. So through all these collaborations, we also end up broadening our audiences, which fundamentally is also what Creative Europe is all about. Collaboration, celebrating distinct cultures, but also appealing to a diverse audience, not restricted to Europe, but to the world. So it is through that distinctness, which gives us our Mediterranean mark and can be our strong point, that we can also address universal themes and get to global audiences. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, but you mentioned human beings,
yes,
persons, and institutions. So apparently, officially, institutions must be the instruments of singular persons. In your experience, Creative Europe is able to do something in this field or not?
It can, but it cannot do it on its own, which is why it is not the only European entity dedicated to film. And well, we're all here representing different aspects of this industry, which is very complex.
Yeah.
But how, for instance, Creative Europe is perceived in Malta?
Well, it is perceived as something which is needed, but it is also something that many people wish to access, but not all are able to. So it is a challenge which we have as an island. And again, only through collaboration and through other countries working, yes, even with Malta. Like we have collaboration in the northern side of Europe, the Balkans, etc., we can have that replicated and adapted to the Mediterranean. And therefore, in time, make it more accessible even for Malta.
Correct. I agree with you. And especially the experience of an island is so particular, so different, also in the landscape of Europe, which is really crucial to make a bridge also for the island in a way. It's not because he's an Italian like me, it's not because he's the last one of the panel, but I have to say that Enrico Vannucci, as your image, represents, in my opinion, in my eye, the best of the idea of a European structure able to work for culture, cinema, and entertainment too. Because your image is not just part of the structure and the bureaucracy of the European Union, it's a real concrete reality of cooperation. So may I ask him, which is your experience and your point of view about this idea, promoted also by Teresa, of circulation and promotion of the different countries and the different cultures in the European and in the Mediterranean landscape?
Yes, of course. I would also like to thank you all for inviting me. And I would take it from you said, you do not belong to the European Union bureaucracy. We belong to the Council of Europe bureaucracy, which means it's
exactly.
a different...
This is the reason why I mentioned the difference.
Yeah, I may say something which is quite clear for someone, but it needs to be stressed. The Council of Europe is a wider but less deep organization than the European Union. It covers 47 member states all over Europe, almost, not the UK, but Malta is a member state of the Council of Europe. Although a rematch is a partial agreement, an enlarged partial agreement, meaning that member states of the Council of Europe can decide to cooperate in terms of cinema and film co-productions, which is the case for 38 member states of the Council of Europe, plus Canada. I said enlarged for the reason why that member states that are not member of the Council of Europe can also be members of a rematch. For the time being, this is the case of Canada only. Just to give the institutional framework for that for us is very important. In terms of the Mediterranean region, of course, all North Shore Mediterranean countries belong to a rematch, so it could be a good platform to actually cooperate. And I think the country we are missing is actually Malta, which could be a significant improvement in terms of coverage. We do cooperate with countries from the southern shore in the sense that co-productions can also involve states that are not member states of Erimage, which is the case, of the other countries, because in the structure of co-productions, up to 30% of the budget, can be allocated to non-member states of Erimage, and this is the way that some countries not belonging to Erimage have followed in order to cooperate with the other member states. We keep talking, it's me actually, I keep talking about member states, but I'd like to say that actually it's film professionals that we support, it's not countries. We receive resources from member states, but then we try to support co-production in the sense of helping those professionals based in different countries to work together, so to have this cultural exchange you were referring to before. So from our point of view, it's important to support the professionals and to allow this cultural exchange in this way of getting to know each other in order to have a better understanding of and to find out what we have in common as human beings. From that point of view, I fully share what has been said so far from the other speakers. And I think it's important to say that it's a way, a remark, it's a way for member states to pool resources and to kind of pursue this mission of enhancing the film industry and the co-production, so cooperation in the film sector through a common tool, which is what we are doing actually. So in our experience, there is room to cooperate. It's a very successful experience. Remark was established in '88 and started working in '89, so it's a long time ago. And co-productions have increased massively since then, and as some speakers have already highlighted, that's the way forward for many states, because that allows less developed industries to actually understand how work can be carried out, to tell stories that do not belong to their country, to get to know colleagues or partners in different states. So that's and the last word before hoping to have replied to your question, it's a cultural fund. We have a cultural aim, which is co-production, which is bringing together professionals from different countries, which is paramount for us. We are not there to support the industry from a very industrial point of view. Of course, this is the direct aim is to allow cultural exchanges, cultural development of films and cooperation across borders. So it's completely consistent with all that has been said so far. And to a certain extent, just to give some basic notions, of course, we cooperate with the European Union, but also with Europa Cinema. When mention was made before of member states of countries being beneficiary of the media program, those member states of Remark that are not beneficiary of that kind of support receive some support from us, exhibitors. We try to complement with the resources that we have this support for cinemas in those member states of Remark that do not belong to the media program. So that's we try to cover the value chain, although always with a cultural focus. And very soon, a new distribution program will be also launched. This is not the time, because the board of management has not decided the details yet, but we have frozen this kind of support over the last couple of years, a little bit more, and it's going to be soon announced, a new program in order to enhance circulation. But I mean, this is something which needs to be approved by our member states still. So it's just to say that we have this idea, co-productions, but also to ensure that our films actually can be seen by audiences, because of course it's important, freedom of expressions, but it's also important to entertain and to let people get to know each other through films and audiovisual products.
But in your experience and the experience of your image, the attention to the southern side of the sea increased in the last 10, 15 years or not?
It did, and the situation is different according to the different countries, because this is a tool which has been used. What just to give some more information, I'm afraid I'm talking a bit too much about ourselves, but as Gap Financer, we arrived very late in the process of film production, and we receive requests for support from producers based in these countries. So to a certain extent, we also take stock of what producers are producing. And I can say there is more interest. European producers are looking outside of Europe ever more, in particular in the northern Africa, in the Middle East, but also beyond. And it's thanks to them that we receive requests for support of stories and cooperation with producers based in other countries. From our point of view, it's important because we believe in this, in cultural dialogue, etc. But as mentioned, the direct beneficiaries for our independent producers based in our member states. So it's them who are actually going out, reaching out to their colleagues, partners in other member states. And by means of this professional link they establish, we actually receive an increasing number of requests for support of projects, both with co-producers based in these countries, but sometimes also just stories happening in these countries, although there is no producers actually based in these countries. And I think there is room for development. But of course, as mentioned, it's producers who need to find a story to tell and to set up, a project that can be supported. We don't have an autonomous policy. We are very, very much interested in developing this cultural dimension, but we, to a certain extent, are lazy. We wait for producers to submit the projects to us. And anyway, it's a slowly progressing trend that we are witnessing.
Sorry, Teresa.
No. No, there are, for me, Eurimage has always been a beacon of opening and good strategies and good practice for cinema. But there is a problem that right now it's difficult to make, to foresee the future. It's always difficult to foresee the future, but when you decide to have a debate about European strategies, when there is no European Parliament, so that's even more difficult. But for me, Eurimage, because it supports the curiosity of an extended idea of Europe, is super helpful also to reach out to other countries. But then you have the other countries. How can you think that Lebanon, in the state in which it is, can have a government that will decide to pay the quota to become a member of Eurimage? So do you think that in the future it could be possible that Eurimage becomes the door, the European door toward those countries that cannot pay the quota to become a member of Eurimage, and Europe will pay for them? Is a way to let them in the community, because the best part of the countries, Egypt, they lost even the Suez Channel, they don't have anything left, not even the eye to cry. And it is a country with a great tradition of cinema, but the Egyptian government will never, ever have the money or decide that to give the money to Eurimage will be a priority. Which is Europe? Do you think that there is a possibility to go around this?
Well, this is a very difficult question to answer by me. I think this is a very political decision which is up to member states to take. What I can say is that we have a bottom-up approach to these issues. As I was mentioning, we support producers, so we look at projects more than at the geopolitical structure in countries. So from that point of view, I think I don't see how at this point in time contributions for other member states could be paid. I can very well see how it's already happened, and it's increasing, the frequency, the prevalence is increasing, how professionals, producers in our member states can find partners in these countries. In the structure of our co-productions, up to 30% of the structure can come from non-member states, which allows this cooperation to happen, although clearly we wouldn't support the producers not established in our member states. I think it's a very long-term objective, the one you're mentioning, but I really hope this is very consistent with the vision that when Eurimage was first established at the end of the 80s, and you remember what time in European history that was. I think this is consistent with that vision. At this point in time, resources are tight. So from my point of view, we have this bottom-up approach. I think we can look into projects that can build up a financial structure which could actually lead to this kind of cooperation to take place without governments in these member states to actually pay contributions. At this point in time, there's got nothing or not much to do. There is a good sign in terms of cooperation, for example, because the member states of Eurimage agreed to allow those of them willing to pay the Ukrainian contribution, because of course Ukraine, I know it's not Mediterranean, but it's a country which is experiencing a very difficult time. It's not for me to speak about it, but other member states can actually pay the contribution on an exceptional basis on behalf of Ukraine in order to allow Ukraine to be a full member, to take advantage of the working of the fund, get support, although maybe they are not contributing 100%. And other member states kind of make up for this shortfall in resources. So solidarity can happen, but political will must be there. Ukraine is a very exceptional situation. I'm not saying, this is open for anyone, but I'm saying, this is, how things could develop.
Okay. You want to ask
Can
a
I-
question?
yeah,
Yeah.
if I
Now
may.
we open the floor now with him.
Yes. So just to mention a little bit, to add something to what Enrico said also, since I am an ex-Eurimage colleague, one other thing that Eurimage does is that they give these very interesting development prizes in various festivals. And this is also a way to support filmmakers and projects coming from other areas. I think what Teresa mentioned as an idea is a great idea. It's obviously depends on political decisions in the end. But there's also a problem linked to that, because even if, let's say, I don't know, the European Union had to pay the fee for Lebanon, let's say, to join Eurimage, if the country doesn't help itself, they cannot even, qualify. Their projects won't be even eligible. And I'm saying this because this applies to basically all countries. It's not enough to join Eurimage if your fund doesn't invest enough, and if your fund is too small, then you're gonna have also problems later on, So it's a club within which you can top up your financing, but I think the country itself, each country needs to invest in themselves, in their creatives. And this is a very important point to keep in mind, I guess.
If I can add, but then it becomes a little bit technical, because the process to join a Eurimage is very well established in terms of rules to be applied. And of course, the state of the industry or the state concern is part of the analysis carried out by the board of management. So from that point of view, it's clear that the industry needs to move towards a European model in order for it to be able to join. So it's clear, I think it becomes technical, but it's not something, as Anton was saying, it's not the end of a process, but it's a very advanced milestone on a way to joining, so that's for sure. And then on the other side, if the state is not a member state of the Council of Europe, unanimity must be reached. So, but that's a political thing as well. So, I mean,
And I don't want to deny the incredible importance of Eurimage, the money that is given through the co-producers, the European co-producers that produce other films from the rest of the world. Not just as a programmer, I see so many films that exist because there is a Eurimage brand on them. So really, you are important, yeah. But now you don't, Giorgio,
Yes.
sorry, before, do you want to add something before leaving the word to the floor?
No, I have a couple of questions after, but if the floor is interested to participate in this discussion, I would be more than pleased to understand the questions or statements.
Yeah, there is a question here. Can you introduce yourself, because we are going to record we are recording the panel, so.
My name is Matthew Maggi. I have more of a statement rather than a question, because I'm sure the panel is curious why most of the seats are empty. But I can give you one explanation of there's probably more than one, but I'm going to pinpoint one. Because the irony is that we're trying to talk about and promote collaboration and sharing of cultures through cinema. And these discussions happen all the time during these kind of events. I've been to many, and I'm sure many of my colleagues who have been in the industry have been to many as well. But the irony is that in order to get access to these institutions abroad, there needs to be both the political will, as someone has mentioned already, and the will from the public as well as the industry. And unfortunately, I feel that there's a lack of both in Malta, which is why our local film fund is currently frozen and in limbo. Our local co-production fund is currently frozen and in limbo. And it's been the case for as long as I remember, but especially these last couple of years, which incidentally is as long as the festival has been going through, because unfortunately our local institutions tend to focus on foreign connections and foreign extravaganza and local extravaganza, which is this festival. And unfortunately, it's like planting a tree with an unhealthy seed and without watering it, which can be a short-term solution, because a tree with an unhealthy seed and without watering it will die out quickly. So I'm asking whoever can do something more, especially people from Creative Europe, and especially the local people who are connected with Creative Europe, can do more to emphasize on a plan, a long-term strategy, to really connect the local institutions with those. Because without a local film fund, we can't really connect with the foreign institutions, that is Eurimage and Creative Europe. In fact, you can look at the program. There isn't a local Maltese feature film this year being shown. And if I remember correctly, the one...
But there will be one next year.
The one last year was...
No, next year, because we have Alex Camilleri, who got the funding from a DOCA Film Institute, and is going to be ready by the end of the year.
Let's hope that the film festival actually happens next year, because if the seats remain empty, I doubt it will. But it's a shame, because most of the people within the industry have given up of listening to these same talks, which are very interesting and very useful, but it would feel pointless without them having access to proper local structures, like foreign countries. Greece is a bankrupt country. They produce more local films. We are reminded every day that we have one of the highest GDPs in Europe, but we don't have...
Time!
So, yeah, that's the statement. It's a general feeling of many people whom, unfortunately, are not here.
Can I jump in? It's a little bit what I thank you, Matthew, right? Thank you, Matthew. It's a little bit a continuation of what I mentioned vis-a-vis Lebanon, but it's the same situation. I mean, you can be part of Creative Europe, which is the case of Malta. You can be part of Eurimage, which is not the case of Malta. But unless you invest in your own creatives, you cannot get your projects there. So I think it's important that to have these discussions, but it's also important to really start working on pumping up the budget of the local film fund, trying to get a balance between what is invested in servicing and what is invested in the let's say the real creative industry, which in the end would be the real industry. So I think these are important points. It's important to talk about them, but it's important also to, at some point, take action. Because in the end, Malta's part of Creative Europe, but it's very hard to compete with others. I'm also an expert for Creative Europe sometimes, and the level of projects which arrive at Creative Europe are very high. But that's because a lot of money has been already invested on a local and national level. So if we want the projects to be of a certain level, to be competitive at international funds like Creative Europe, the countries themselves have to help themselves. I think it's simple.
And
This is a natural rule of industry, by the way. If you don't start, you never achieve. We don't have a lot of time, so may I ask you if you are able, because I would like to be a little bit much more concrete. In a way, we started this fantastic discussion, but what will be the Mare Nostrum of the Mediterranean culture and industry? I mean, it's not just a cultural point of view, because if you see the reality of nowadays, Mediterranean will be a strategic point for industry, finance, policy, and strategy. So if culture, if cinema, if institutions are not able to understand firstly that will be a fantastic and a dramatic challenge for the very next future, it will be a waste for every one of us. So maybe can I ask you to have an idea to increase this transformation of attention? Because it's absolutely true that in the last years, there was a much more increased sensibility to the taste of others. So one thing to do, one thing that could be possible to do in the next future in order to increase this movement, this changement. I'm provocative, so I start with Teresa.
No, I'm the deputy moderator here.
No, shall I say?
Yes, yeah, I'm deputy moderator.
No, I think in the Mediterranean, as we were saying before, there's a lot of potential, and I can imagine many things, happening. Again, we go back to the political will in the end, but I can imagine small funds like a small international fund which focuses on the Mediterranean area, Mediterranean region. I mean, similar to what the Balkan states have between themselves. They have a small fund, and I think it's been working for around 20 years. It's small, but it works quite well between them. It has managed to create a lot of collaborations between various countries.
You can see the North Macedonia,
exactly.
Bosnia, with Greece very
with
often
Greece,
leading the bunch, of the wild bunch, but then you have Montenegro that by himself would never ever make a film, with Macedonia and Greece and Bosnia and Herzegovina, a little bit of Serbian sometimes, and then do something.
Yeah. So there are a lot of examples. I mean, we don't need to reinvent the wheel, but there are a lot of examples where we can see that small funds like these, they invest in not only co-productions, but also co-development, which is crucial because you start from the very beginning in collaborating at the very initial stages. So yes, why not create something between the Mediterranean countries?
Yeah, I have something to say too, like insisting on the creative aspects. And I think it all goes together. It's necessary to, I know it sounds very commercial, but to always keep in mind that people are going to watch this. And the more people watch it, the better. For everything, nourishes itself. And there is now, for the Mediterranean to do things that many people watch and that cross borders, the possibility to be, the platforms have changed the whole thing. I mean, we're now watching commercial series from Korea, from countries and they are so popular, and I'm talking Squid Game, others, okay? they are so popular, liked by so many people, and they come from countries that 10 years ago, you wouldn't even have the opportunity to see, you know, to watch something from those. So making, you know, taking advantage of how easy it is now to cross borders, always keep in mind that things have to be liked by people. And if the potential audience is very broad, I'm very sure the industry and politicians will be very interested in, you know, it's something that, it's like a cycle. So, yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Any
Frédéric?
Yes, on my end, I'm not really pro-platform, not that I have a problem with that. It's more that I defend the possibility of watching film in cinemas. And yeah, it's my job, it's normal. And I think there is something happening. Like me, if I can just give an example of how my cinema worked before COVID and after COVID, we're just like expanding so much, like in terms of admission, we did plus 30% last year, plus 30% still in 2024, so it's working well. But it's not the point. I guess it's really important that, as I mentioned, that around the Mediterranean Sea, or actually people that are, like countries that are not part of media, it's really important that we maybe not too, as I mentioned that earlier, like give an incentive, financial incentive, not based on based on the results that the cinema will do on European film. I think it's really important because right now we have French Institute and we have, and they do a great job, and countries delegation that do a festival, German festival, the Norwegian festival, things like that. But we need something that is not like so event and more like a regular programming. Like, so it's more something that get into the mind of the people every day. There is a new film, European film, releasing in cinema, and not based on something like what is good cinema, good European cinema, or bad, but how we give the possibility actually to the programmer of those countries to decide what corresponds to their audience, and also how they can build an audience based on the film. So I really think like Europe should help, once again, based on box office and on admission, those countries to have a little bit of, basically to program more European films.
Enrico.
Just to reply to the provocation by Giorgio, I think, you know, in what we can do, from my point of view, I was sorry to hear, we've heard this many times, but I think in terms of our image, what is important for us is to make ourselves known. Because people may know it on a professional level. We need to communicate better and more, both with the profession and with governments. It's a different role, and we are very much aware of it, and I think, you know, that's where we can actually do something at our level. You know, I know it's a minimal reply, you know, because I mean I could build up a scenario, a golden scenario for the future, but that would never happen. Whereas, you know, I would like to thank also to have been given the opportunity to be here today, because I think it's important. And each state with whom we communicate, things are different. You know, Malta is a Council of Europe member state, is a European Union member state. It's very different from Lebanon, for example. Now, I don't want to talk about the technicalities, but, you know, with each and every partner or person or government or professional we speak to, it's important that we enter into details. I try not to be too technical, legalistic, and these kind of things, but I think, you know, we should be better known, not just for the logo in the credits of a film, but also to know what we actually do. That's also why I really wanted to talk about cinema support, not just co-production, although in money-wise, it's a tiny share of our budget. So I think, you know, what is for us to do make something happen is to communicate more and better with everyone. Governments, third countries, professionals, producers in our member states, so that they can look out for opportunities. And I think, you know, this is, unfortunately, if we had more resources, we could do more. But I think, you know, in terms of communication is where we have quite some room for improvement, if I should be self-critical and accept the provocation by Giorgio.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Giorgio, I leave
6
you
o'clock.
I leave you to do your job, even if you are at home, because I have an introduction in 1 hour far away from here in San Julian. So I leave in his hands. Thank you very, very, very much.
But I think, yes,
you can,
our time is expired.
and I give it to you, Frederick, the role of, you do a lot of Q&A in your theaters, so you check the floor and you ask, because Giorgio, I'm not sure that he has a view on the floor.
I didn't get, what do you want me to do?
Can you check the audience and
Yes.
and Giorgio does moderation, and I thank you so much. I have to run away.
Thank you, Teresa.
Thank you, Teresa.
Thanks, Teresa. Bye.
So, any questions from the audience?
Do you have any questions? Or another statement, maybe? No?
No.
Would you like to add anything on your part?
When there is a collaboration with a country that is not a European country, I think it should be taken into account that this collaboration needs equality, because on many occasions what I read is that there is this European producer co-producing or shooting in this Mediterranean country of the other shore. And yes, they always say, yes, the crew, we will employ local crew, the technicians, some actors, some extras, but I think it would be very good if they also included creative people from this country, not only a technical crew, so that the result of the movie or series would be really, a collaboration. Just an idea.
You're looking at me as though
No,
that's the case, for example, with several Euromage films from Israel, with less than 30%, with clearly Israeli content were shot, from that point of view. I agree with you. The kind of cooperation, it depends on the projects, but it's always something we receive, but we are quite open from that point of view. We have, I could mention several Israeli projects, with shot in Hebrew with
in some cases for sure, but I think
that's the way forward. No, I agree with you.
Yeah.
No, I don't know.
Can I ask to Daniela, what will be the perspective for Creative Europe after the elections, after the new structure of the European Union? No one of us knows who will be the commissioner, no one of us who will be the structure, but the program is conceived apart of the elections. So what will be the perspective for you and for the Media Desk in Malta?
Well, what you ask is also the question of all Creative Europe desks at the moment.
Hello.
So,
it's larger than this.
Yes, so we are awaiting more concrete news on what the general direction will be for Europe in general, and that is when, as Creative Europe desks, we can also see what the way forward is for us.
Very diplomatic answer.
Maybe if there is no question from the audience, maybe I let you close the panel if you want, Giorgio.
Yes, of course.
I'm just checking one last time. I think we're good. Your final words then.
Well, my final word is I need a yes or not from your side. I'm personally convinced that in any case, the ground we tried to develop in the last couple of decades was interesting enough. I mean, 20 years ago, it was much more difficult to understand any chance to have a real circulation of entertainment, cinema, images, stories, actors, characters on the different sides of the Mediterranean. Nowadays, I think that something changed. But I don't know if it's my perception as a film programmer, a festival programmer, because festivals are a sort of protected island, if you want, or if it's a reality that you can also perceive your personal experiences. I mean, if this kind of discussion is not just an utopia, we have to start with the idea that something could change, can change, has changed. Is it true or not?
It's difficult to answer yes or no.
But we have
But
to believe that's going to
I would say yes.
Yes, of course. That's why we are here, no? Yes. We are going to try to make it change at least.
Yes, but I mean, you are surrounded by people, by communities, by experiences. Do you still, generally speaking, are we a fortress in Europe or are we much more open than in the past?
More open than in the past.
Agreed, but a lot of more work left to be done, even within Europe.
Shall I also? Yeah, I think, we are more open, but it's a critical turning point. But I think, things can improve further this year. I'm quite optimistic. And I mean, if you want to get things done, you need to be. So I think we have improved things and we can do better.
And from my side, I repeat that it's a crucial challenge. It's just like Europe after the fall of the wall. It was an opportunity for industry, for investors, for politicians, and for communities. Some understood, some others not. The actual situation in the Mediterranean, it's an incredible challenge and a crucial point for a general worldwide strategy. We don't have to miss it. This is my personal statement and the reason why I was more than happy to participate and to ask you to be together in this discussion, because I don't think that only politicians can have a dream. Maybe normal person, normal professionals can have a dream. I have. Thank you so much to the audience.
So much.
Thank you so much to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.